Welcome to everybody to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you for listening and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we talk with our guests. They become friends and part of this Tell Me Your Story family when we find out about where they're coming from, what they have to offer. And today is no exception. A woman who has... I suppose we could use the euphemism, gone through the ringer, especially when you take into consideration some of the things that she has gone through in the last 20 years plus. And we're going to talk with her. Her name is Carrie Hart, and she has a website, of course, and it is carriehart.com. And she has written a number of books. One in particular we're going to focus on today, Sojourner in Ataquay, Mind-Expanding Ideas and Practices, Practical Tools for the Open-Minded Seeker of a Meaningful Life. Carrie, thank you so much for being with us today. It's really a pleasure to have you with us. Again, as I said before, especially considering some of the things that you've been through in your life.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just delighted to be here.
You, it seems as though your journey, I suppose I could put it, officially began around the time of your husband, Edward's passing. Would that be a fair assessment?
Well, writing my book began there. It was a point of reassessment. I mean, Ed and I had been married for 46 years. And, well, if you've ever gone through that, it's a lot to go through. And what happened is, in order to get through it and to not only survive and go on, but to create a life that still had joy at its center, what I did was I turned to all these tools and techniques that I had discovered in a spiritual journey that had been going on for 25 years. And I dipped down into that to rebuild my life, to create a new life that where I could still say, yeah, I'm glad to be alive, right?
Yeah. Well, there are some of us who have experienced something similar as far as the loss of a spouse, but not actually through death. In my case, through divorce. And it is a little lesser of a form of a death, but still, that's what it's been called over the years. People have referred to it as such. And there was a time, and every once in a while, I don't know if I want to say I reminisce, but I go back in my mind to those good times, to those wonderful times, to those connected times that we had, and wonder what did I do wrong to end up out here, out in the wilderness, so to speak. And then, of course, life continues on. And in my case, another spouse, and making and making the commitment that I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm going to do. I'm doing everything I can to hold it together. Okay.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, of our conversation, we will be celebrating 20 years of marriage, the 21st of December, 2022.
Oh,
so.
Bravo. A good marriage is such a fabulous foundation in life, isn't it?
It certainly is. It certainly is.
The place where you can be centered in a really good marriage. It can help you grow as an individual person.
Yeah. Well, your latest book, which is, as I mentioned, Sojourner in Ataquay. Again, it is mind-expanding ideas and practical tools for the open-minded seeker of a meaningful life. It seems to me, and I want to get into this, of course, we'll find out, first of all, about your sojourn and you as a sojourner, and also this place they call Ataquay that you have referred to.
Ataquay,
not Ataquay, Ataquay. But when you were on your journey, when would you say and I'll use your term. When did your sojourn, your more metaphysical or spiritual sojourn begin? And obviously, it was long before, maybe
Yeah,
before you were
yeah,
married for 40 years.
yeah. Well, it happened somewhere in the middle of that marriage.
Okay.
But it happened on quite specifically on my 50th birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had several amazing things happen right on my 50th birthday. The first was I was not religious. I was not interested in the paranormal or the religious. I was just totally secular person. And I, on my 50th birthday, two people gave me gifts, gave me books of a spiritual nature, which was kind of surprising to me because I had that wasn't anything we talked about, but you know how that works, that when the time is there, people reach out and give you what you need.
Hmm.
And so one of those books was a Deepak Chopra book, which I enjoyed very much, and I've read a lot of Deepak Chopra since then. And the other was a book called Artist's Way. uh, and one of the things they said in the Artist's Way was they asked you to journal every day. Did something they called the daily pages. And so you would just write 3 pages every day. And so the person who gave me that gift gave me the Artist's Way plus a journal, blank pages. And what also happened on my 50th birthday, because I remember it was the very first entry I made in my journal, was I just learned today. So today's my 50th birthday. I just learned today that there are headhunters looking to replace me in my job.
Mm. Mm.
I was in the corporate world, and I was a vice head. This was a very important job for me. It was my first job as a vice president of information technology and IT. And there I was in the IT corporate world with no spiritual things. And that combination of people reaching out to me with spiritual books and a morning practice that I began of journaling and getting fired from my job, which freed me up to have a lot of spiritual time. You know how it is? It's like I suspect a divorce is the same kind of idea. I haven't ever been divorced myself, but I suspect it's the same, that sometimes these events that happen they just catapult you into new ways of looking at things. And certainly a job loss of an important job is one of those things that does that. And then what happened was I started writing my journal, but it was still secular at that point. And then one day I went into a bookstore and found myself walking down the aisle I always avoided, the one that says spirituality and religion.
Hmm.
I found myself walking down that aisle, and I was just drawn to a book called You Are Psychic. And as I said, I've never been interested in psychic phenomena either. But I was just drawn to that book. And that book I bought and I read. And one of they were telling you how to expand your, what we would now call intuitive senses.
Uh-huh.
And one of them was a practice of, in the morning, ask for a word for the day and jot down what comes to you. And so since I had just started a practice of journaling, I would go down in the morning, and as part of my journaling, I would do what they said in the book. I'd breathe down to a peaceful place and ask for a word for the day. And some word would just pop into my mind. I'd write it down. And then during the day, I found that something would happen during the day that made that word an important thing, right?
Hmm.
And this was my opening. This was my beginning of an understanding of the kind of help and guidance that is actually there for us. And it led from a word for the day to messages full of advice. And that, as I say, that was my opening. And sometimes when you have you just open the door a crack, and all of a sudden then the wind comes and the door is blown wide open, and you're just taken into a new life.
Yeah, I can relate to that because I have been a part of musical groups,
Oh,
choruses over in high school.
uh-huh.
And then when I moved to Santa Barbara, I got involved with a local chorus and quartet. In other words, it was a men's chorus group, and then we would break up into quartets and learn.
Oh,
And then it was also that process where I learned that my father, in his youth, was a member of a quartet. I'd never heard about that before, that he was a member of a quartet. Anyway,
was
so
it a barber shop?
barbershop, yes.
Oh, right.
And
My
I got to tell
father
you,
was
what
my
a great
father was in a barbershop quartet.
yeah. Well, I'll tell you. Then just recently, it was last late July, early August, that it was suggested that I go into audition. Now, I've never done any of this before. I've not
Uh-huh.
auditioned for anything. I've gone to job interviews, which is an audition, but and
Yeah.
you want to audition for what they call the Santa Barbara Revels.
Ah.
And it's a group that performs here in Santa Barbara. We are putting on a performance on the 17th and 18th of December at our
Ah.
local Libero Theater, the Scottish solstice celebration for Christmas. And there are actually three performances. I figured just one performance. No, that's okay. Three?
Uh-huh.
Three? Oh, okay. So I go in and I audition, and of course, I am selected.
Yay.
So I'm a part of the tenor group. But I
Yay.
was not wanting to take on any acting. However, I was sort of drafted for one of two parts. One part has two lines, and the other part, which is between those two lines, has one line. And
Okay.
they haven't decided yet which one of those I'm going to be, but be that as it may, I have those memorized. Didn't think I could really do that, but it wasn't that hard because it was a whole whopping three lines.
Uh-huh.
And what it's done is it's introduced me to some new people. It
Uh-huh.
introduced me certainly to a new experience. And a lot of these
Yeah.
folks have been doing this for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, 15 years, that kind of thing. And it allows me to bring something home to the wife, in terms of if not sharing the experiences, at least bringing into the home a different energy, a different mood, if you will. Not that my moods were that bad or anything, but just it's something that I'm experiencing, and I'm sure that you have been,
Artistic expression is such a huge,
yeah.
huge part of
Mhm.
the life, of a full life.
Yeah. Well, as I said, it's been very interesting. As of our conversation, uh, I don't know how it's going to go on the 17th and 18th. All I know is, in talking with one of the gentlemen there, who has been in it for like 3 years, we had an interesting experience with the director during one of the rehearsals on a Saturday. And
Yeah.
a lot of people were still reading from the songbook. They were still reading and from the script, you know.
Uh-huh.
And he didn't scream or yell or anything, but he made it abundantly clear that he was disappointed that people were not out of the book yet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So at the Monday choir practice, I asked this one guy who'd been in it for 3 years. I says, "Was that an unusual experience, or does that happen every year?" He says, "Oh, no, no, no. That happens every year about this time. There's one Saturday where the director will basically, I don't want to say go off the rails, but he's not happy. And
Hmm.
it sort of puts a fire under people to really, and then by the time we get to the performances, it's magic."
Hmm.
I said, "Oh, thank God," because I only have three lines, but they hadn't decided which ones. I knew what they were. We made it through, blah, 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 blah. And it brought to mind, and this is something that I want to talk to you about in terms of your experiences, primarily from your past, in that when you have stepped through some of these doors,
Hmm.
or maybe windows, who knows? Um, it must have been very uncomfortable, just as it has been for me in certain instances going through this process over the last few months of rehearsals.
Mm.
It must have been uncomfortable. And in one of my previous interviews just recently, that is one of the ways in which you know that you are sort of going in the right direction, that you're
Yeah.
safe, okay, you're okay, but you're uncomfortable.
Yeah, you're challenged. You're
Hmm.
challenged.
Hmm.
You're so gee, I have so many things I are going through my mind based on what you're saying. First off, I'm a singer too, and I am part of the Angel City Chorale, a big choir, like a 180 person choir in Los
Woo.
Angeles.
Wow.
So yeah, we're neighbors, and I understand the singing. And one of the really interesting things uh, is that it was my singing and performing that first made me really, really wonder about energy and intuition. In that, what I found when I was out performing and the lights were off, so I couldn't see the audience, right? And there's music, you can hear the music, the band or whatever, so you can't hear the audience.
Hmm.
You know how the audience feels when you feel the energy of the audience, and you can feel when they love what you're doing, especially as a quartet is like a solo. You're out
Yeah.
there, you're
Oh,
not
yeah.
in a big choir, and you do something, and say you have a gesture, or when you deliver one of your lines, you hit one part of the song, you can feel them. You feel that connection. It's beautiful. I love it. It was one of the first things that made me, was an opening door for me well before I was looking at things I might call spiritual. It was just that something's going on here. There's more. This is an energetic experience. And so, but back to what you're talking about, the uncomfortable. I actually have a term for that.
Hmm.
And that I call it scary good. When I'm in a situation where I know it's what I'm meant to do, I'm driven to overcome the challenges and go forward and do something courageous, but I'm scared. I'm scared. And of course, your first singing experiences, and like you're talking about acting, I haven't, those kind of experience, and auditioning is horrifying too. So these are scary things, but
Yeah.
you feel driven to go do them because there's something in you that says, I'm meant to do this. This is important. I'm going to work through whatever it is on. And to me, those moments, those scary good things, are the times when you, to me, it's a signal you're walking your path,
Yeah.
because your path is always full of challenges. If you're just walking along, everything's fine, I get up today and I'm just going along and everything's easy, that's less of an indication that if I am put in, like you're talking about, highly uncomfortable and challenging things where I have to dig deep and pull out everything I have and give it and really risk everything, because that's the way it feels.
Hmm.
That's when I feel that that's a sign that you're doing something really important with your life.
I would agree. I've often found that when the job, and I've been doing this for 43 plus years,
Huh?
when it becomes, uh, I don't want to say easy, but when there's tranquility,
Mm-hmm.
there's peace, and there's which is all good. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's all
I
good.
know, I know the rapids are coming. Okay, I know, I know
That's
the
right.
rapids. They are coming, and I need to prepare for that. And there's nothing wrong with the rapids either, because it's going to teach me how to ride the rapids.
That's
As we
right.
as we teach people how to listen to Tell Me Your Story. We're talking with Carrie Hart, and we're talking about Sojourner to Ataquay here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it's a pleasure to have Carrie Hart, not the other guy, but this is Carrie Hart on the program talking about her sojourn. Tell us about what Ataquay is.
Ataquay. All right. So,
Ataquay, where is it on the map?
on the map, let's see, it's on depends on what kind of a map we're looking at. If you were looking at a map of the universe, where you would find that is in between what I call, to me, there's a place that I call the great all, or the oneness, a place where we're all one and our highest possible energy. And then there's us down here on the earth. And down here on the earth, we are trying through our practices to reach up to that energy of our highest self, to that energy of the goodness and beauty and wonder, that I see it as a channel flowing down to us.
Mm-hmm.
And where Ataquay is in that region between the great all and oneness of light and love, and us down here as these earth beings trying to make our way. In between that, there is a range where intuition and serendipity, and maybe you're talking to some angels or spirit guides, all of that part of wonder. The wonder is where the miracles happen. It's where the surprise healings happen. It's where, as I say, you may be getting messages and knowings. It's where that knowing that you should go forward and audition for the Santa Barbara quartet,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's in that region. And so I have, over all the years, I travel, consciously travel into that region and receive messages. I do channeling and receive messages from that area and help people receive those messages. And one day I was having a journey all on my own. And I was recording it, though. I was recording my experiences. I'm going along and having my journey. And I saw, and this would be, I guess I'd say in my mind's eye,
Mm-hmm.
a blue portal. And I went through, and there was an energy on the other side called Ataquay. And this energy of Ataquay wanted to be brought out into the world as it is now. It was energy that had been very active thousands of years ago in the Amazon region. I know this all sounds pretty far out, doesn't it?
No, I mean, interestingly enough, it does not, because of some of the things that we've started to get into here in the 21st century and especially in the 2020s.
Right.
We're diving into those realms. I mean, we
Right.
cannot ignore them anymore because they're coming through.
Right. So Ataquay asked me to bring it back through the portal to become a part of our earth energy, the energy that's alive on the earth right now. And then I worked with it for a little while, and then it went out, and I understood that what it needed to do was to learn how things are on the earth now so that it could help fulfill its mission, which was to help humanity. I want to say to help restore the dignity of humanity. That best that we can be, that best
Oh, yeah.
that we are when we're authentic and true and full of beauty and love and life.
Right.
And so then it went kind of out on a journey that didn't involve me for a few years, and now it's come back. Let's come back, and kind of asking me to help it fulfill its mission through me. And one of the gifts of that energy has been a vocabulary. In other words, there are things that are very hard to describe without using a vocabulary that is totally steeped in religion or spiritual beliefs of some sort, and that isn't what you want to convey, right? You want, or in the case of Ataquay, it describes something that we don't really have a word for in English. Deepak Chopra would call Ataquay non-local consciousness. That's what he calls it in his books when he refers to that zone that we enter. And I know when I've done some readings in shamanism, Michael Warner in particular, he refers to Ataquay as non-ordinary reality. So what both of those terms are trying to express is a place we go that's real, but it's not our ordinary place that we are. And it's a place of consciousness, as Deepak Chopra is saying, and he's saying non-local because when you enter Ataquay, you're entering a place that goes beyond time and space, a place where you can know, where your intuition can know things that you couldn't know otherwise. Like you know who is on the telephone before you pick it up, or you know something is coming before you answer the door. Or in some cases, for instance, people have had experiences. It's not uncommon for someone to know when someone else dies, even though they're not with them, someone close to them.
Mm-hmm.
And these are experiences all humans have. And yet our culture, in the Western culture, tells us these aren't real, right? It tries to diminish these experiences instead of honor them. And we don't even have a word for the place that we go to for that but now we do. Ataquay.
Ataquay.
Ataquay, that's where you go to have those experiences that you can't quite describe any other way.
Yeah. Fascinating. We're talking with Carrie Hart, Sojourner to Ataquay, and we are talking about the work that she is doing, helping others to find their way in this world through other worlds, and that's what we're talking about here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it is really a pleasure to have the author of Sojourner in Ataquay, mind-expanding ideas and practical tools for the open-minded seeker of a meaningful life. Now, that's an interesting turn of a phrase, open-minded seeker.
Right.
It seems to me that it would be an oxymoron to say that so-and-so is a closed-minded seeker. They wouldn't be a seeker if they were closed-minded. So it's almost, there is a certain element, and this is in my mind, okay? That's just me, of a redundancy. But what I find interesting is you use that turn of a phrase during this period of time in which we live, because there are so many people who are so certain about what they believe, what they profess, what their allegiance is to, and so on and so forth. And I constantly am going back to the phrase that I heard back when I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
That was, it is better to begin in doubt and end in certainty than to begin in certainty and end in doubt.
Oh, I love
There's a second one that would apply to the second half of that in terms of beginning in certainty and ending in doubt, and that is, it is better to stay silent than open your mouth and remove all doubt as to whether or not you are a fool.
Right. I have heard that, yes.
Yeah. But again, I like the turn of the phrase there, open-minded seeker. You've got to open your mind, and that's, we place this, we have this for 15 years, and actually longer than that, because I've been doing this for a lot longer than the 15 years we've been doing this program. We've laid out what I like to call this giant smorgasbord table. It's huge.
Yeah.
and
Sure.
it's filled with all of the ideas and thoughts and beliefs and concepts of all of my guests and myself. And I just ask people to come and partake of those things that resonate with them and walk away and, feel them, taste them, see them, hear them, etc., etc. And then come back to the table after you've had a chance to assimilate what you have taken from the
Mm,
table.
yeah.
And who knows what you didn't like or what didn't resonate with you before may resonate with you now. And that's part of the
Yes.
spiritual, if you will, evolutionary process, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it certainly is. And oh, I just love everything you've said. And I think that one of the main reasons I wanted to I agree with what you're saying about open-minded and seeker, kind of are saying the same thing, but I wanted to say specifically open-minded because to me, if I've said, oh, I accept everything in this dogma. I accept, yeah, I want a meaningful life, but I have signed up for this particular dogma. To me, that's not being a seeker or open-minded,
Right.
right?
No, no, no. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And and I, if this is a seeking, I don't expect to ever end. I think it's a lifetime of seeking because, as you say, every time you go and you get that little piece, and then you go off and you explore it and you bring it into your life, and all it does is open up more questions. And you keep going to more and more openness, and it gets wider and more expanded. Is a beautiful, beautiful way to live. And curiosity, don't you love the word curiosity?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely.
And we just want to keep saying, what else? What else? What else? What other wonderful things can I do? And I like to be able to. There are some people where it's a. I think these are different people. I'm not sure. I'm not so much after becoming a highly enlightened person, in ascension and a focus on an afterlife isn't my thing.
Yeah.
My thing is more, what can I learn in an expanding, growing, self-growth way that makes this life a beautiful life
Mm-hmm.
and makes this life and these relationships, like we were talking about in a beautiful marriage. This is a wonderful thing to experience.
Yeah.
Wonderful relationships, music. These are, there's so much beauty and wonder in this life when we even just learn a few things about coming into the present moment, right?
Yeah.
And
Mindfulness. You're kind of
yeah,
bringing up the subject of mindfulness.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And don't you find that that's one of the things that you love about music?
Oh, God, yes. My favorite artists in particular, what really blows me away about their music is how relevant it still is even today after quite literally 40 years. I mean,
Mm.
the music I listen to, the music that I really love from the artists that I really enjoy goes back to the 70s when I was a teenager.
Oh,
But
tell me one of them. Tell me one of them.
well, it would be, for example, one of my favorite artists is John Denver.
Oh, yes.
And the music he sings about in terms of course,
Annie's song. I
yeah,
love Annie's song.
his life and what is, as he puts it, what is so about his life, what makes him who he is. I even have, I got a copy of his book in Audible form, and I listened to it. And then, of course, I've listened to his music over and over again. And of course, the story of his life is not the same as the story that he paints. And it's not that he's not lying in his music, but it's like there are certain moments in his life that he puts into song, into lyric, into
Right.
poetry,
Right.
that for some reason he couldn't maintain it all the way through
Mhm.
from one moment to the next.
Well, yeah.
But the way he sings about the things that are important to him, I think my one of my favorites there. Well, there are two in particular. One of them is I want to live, I want to grow, I want to see, I want to know, I want to share all I can give, I want to be, I want to live. Then there's another one that starts out, and of course, I was born under the sign of Cancer in Western astrology, so I was born in June, and there's a song which is written about one of his son, that basically starts out, born in the month of June, no silver spoon to help you out. Your mother had you naturally. Naturally's the way you came out. You know your own mind and you show it to me. Give me the high sign when you want to be free, and so forth and so on. So he is sharing these things. Well, I just started my initial career songwriting. I've written one, and I'm doing the same kind of thing based upon where I'm at that particular moment. It was a little over a year ago. I was facilitated by a good friend who assisted me in the process. Did not feed me the notes, nor did she feed me the words. She just helped me to bring the words out of myself and put them down on the paper.
Mhm.
And basically, the song is entitled "I'm a Good Man." And the
Uh,
chorus is, I'm a good man doing the best I can. Where I'm going is where I'm coming from.
yeah, nice.
Four verses. One pays a little homage my
You
wife.
gonna
Another one
sing
pays a
a
little
little bit of
homage to
that?
my parents. I'm
You
sorry?
gonna, you gonna sing that line so I can hear your voice?
Oh, you mean well, I can. But before I do that, then another one does pay homage to my three favorite artists, John Denver, Dan Fogelberg, and Harry Chapin.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
great storytellers.
Great
As,
storytellers.
yeah, as well as a verse that the first verse that basically speaks to an incident, and this was a conversation my facilitator, and I had. She says, "Go back and think of a time where you did something that you wish you hadn't done, and you kind of caught it right away, and you tried to fix it the best you could."
Oh,
And basically the piece is. Uh, I had you on the phone, years ago. I was talking to you on the phone, and I said some things I knew I shouldn't say. When I hung up, I knew I had done you wrong, but I'm a good man doing the best I can. And
yeah,
so,
nice. I like that.
and the three verses, that one came along with the chorus, and that took about 2 months. The other three verses came along one night at 2 a.m. After a little drama, and that stuff it just came out. It was great.
Uh-huh.
I put this together, and I got to have a greater appreciation for songwriters and
Hmm.
what not only what they go through, because I've listened to John in his interviews, especially on the Tonight Show, where he would talk about how he says, yeah, I'm a performer, and
Yeah.
sometimes it takes minutes to write a song. They just, and that's far and few between. Other times it can take months or years
Hmm.
to finish a work. But what I've noticed, Carrie, is that the singers who are really successful,
Hmm.
and maybe it is monetarily, they sing and write their songs and sing those songs from the heart, from not only real experiences, but in a lot of cases from a lot of real pain and
Hmm.
heartache, as well as real joy and happiness.
Well, what I think is so interesting about this focus on music is as I said, music was really where before I understood the spirituality kind of stuff,
Mhm.
I was getting all this through music. And one of the things that was so interesting in the musical experience is, and this you can experience both as a performer, it's a little stronger if you're a performer, but it's also true listening. There can be a moment in the song, and especially if you're singing, where you are so deeply connected with your heart and spirit that you get chills all over and you feel transported to another place. It's like going, it's like it's like being in a forest. It's like looking at a sunset. It's
Mm.
and that is actually the experience of Ataquay. It's lifting yourself into the zone, into the place that goes beyond time and space. And music does such a beautiful job of that. And what I noticed too as a performer is that, let's say I'm singing a song, but I'm feeling kind of distracted. I'm not totally centered into it. And it's an okay experience, and the audience likes it okay. But then I have some song where I hit the heart of it, like you're saying, like your favorite artists do when they're doing a great rendition of their song. You hit the heart of it, you get that total connection, and you have chills, and you say, wow, I just got lifted beyond myself in that song. Your audience experiences it in exactly the same way. And that's why you can tell when you listen to the recordings of a true artist like that, you can feel
Yeah.
them, that they're in that place.
Yeah.
And what I found later, here I'm years later doing channelings for people. I'm receiving a message from spirit for someone. And I'll be going along, be getting myself down into that zone, and I'm going on, and I'm getting a message for them. And all of a sudden, I hit some sentence where I get that same feeling of the chills and the connection. And I realize that was the sentence that they needed to hear, right?
Mhm.
That was what the whole thing was about, why they came to me. Well, all, may have been a message that lasted a half an hour, but it had one sentence in that was the core,
Yeah.
right? It's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. I think that you're pursuing music like that. It's so important.
Yeah.
It just ah,
Well,
and and it's interesting, those people you're talking about, they are all still storytellers.
yeah.
That's why I love in crafting, because I'm a songwriter too. And in crafting a song, you get to do all these things. You get inspiration.
Mhm.
Sometimes you get inspiration that just comes from nowhere. You're just saying, oh. And of course, I would say that's coming from Ataquay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then and then you have the just the beautiful experience of delivering that and the vulnerability of it. Have you performed your song live for people yet?
So far I've done it once, and
Mm-hmm.
it was at a gathering. I want to say it was young and old, but it was at sort of a retirement center. But there were
Yeah,
young people there. There were the parents of some of the retired people, and I was part of I was part of this my facilitators get together where she had other people she teaches to sing and or play instruments. That's
wonderful.
what she does. And so I was actually last on the I think I was last on the docket, which was okay for me. With I just kind of it was very interesting. And afterwards, I then had to deal with the compliments. I had to deal with the praise and
Mhm.
keep my mouth shut, other than to say, thank you.
Have
Thank
you ever felt so vulnerable in your life, though, as a
Oh,
song that you wrote about your feelings, and now you are performing it live in front of people you don't even know? It's an amazing feeling.
some of the men came up to me and said, "Yeah, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. It was that was great. It touched me, Uh,
Yeah,
and
isn't
so
that great?
because as guys, we're the fixers. I mean, that's
Yeah,
stereotypically we're the fixer.
yeah, that's
You got a
right.
problem, ma'am? I'm going to fix it for you, but she doesn't want it fixed. Okay.
Mhm.
So we're just doing the best we can. We're trying to understand. We're doing our best to understand and to appreciate. I think that one of the things I wanted to ask you about in the light of Ataquay has to do with this aspect of um, I don't want how do I put this dissolving some of these stereotypes of gender. And folks,
Oh,
I'm not talking about, I want to be a woman or I'm a trans or no, that's not what I'm
right.
talking about. I'm talking
The
about
role.
the
You're talking about the
roles that
role.
our society, specifically the patriarchal
Right.
society, has placed, and I've heard it said, Carrie, that as detrimental as the patriarchal system has been to women, it has been almost as detrimental to men.
You know what's interesting to me is that you say patriarchal, but let's take that even to a slightly higher level and
Sure.
say it's the hierarchical. The
Okay.
idea that, and see, and that's one of the things that really bothers me about established religion. It's very hierarchical.
Hmm.
Oh, there's this God that knows better and judges you, and oh, then there are these representatives or that they know more and judge you. And
Yeah.
this whole hierarchy. And our society, our culture is built on hierarchy.
Yeah.
My spiritual beliefs, after exploring all of this, is totally non-hierarchical. You and I, and if you're a man or a woman, if you are a king or someone living in a refugee camp, if you are president or one of the peons working for the CEO, whatever it is, you're all equal. And that whole patriarchal hierarchical, it's the same thing. It's just
Yeah.
that men were put at the top of the hierarchy. But it's rather, the problem is not just patriarchy, it's hierarchy. In other
Mm.
words, if you put a woman at the top of the hierarchy, that's wrong too.
Right. Yeah. I get you.
And
Yeah.
it's funny you should bring this up because I was just this morning talking to a friend of mine about that. And I said that about my total dislike for hierarchy. And I spent many years in the corporate world. The corporate world is totally hierarchical. Oh my God. You have the people up here that make the decisions whether or not to hire and fire the people down here and that tell them what to do. And it's not some of that. Maybe there are people that need to be leaders and people that need to go along, but the whole structure about the salaries, that there are people up here that get $10 million and people down here that get $12 an hour.
Hmm.
and there are people up here that have the huge uh, penthouse office and all, the whole thing. It's all built on status, structure,
Yeah.
hierarchy. And when you go into the spiritual world, or actually the musical, when you are really opening yourself to the beauty of life, it's totally non-hierarchical. And I think it's a goal we need to have. It's kind of like the the business world and the political world are winners and losers.
Mm. Yeah.
And what and it's so wrong.
And it would be, and even what I was going to say would be just as wrong by flipping the pyramid upside down so the base is up and the point is down, but the pay scale is still up. In other words, when it's flipped the other way, and you've got the one guy at the top who's making 10 million, you flip the pyramid, now all the little people are making 10 million. That isn't any better than the other. And I don't, I sit here and I go, what is it that you are doing, Mr. CEO, that justifies you taking home this massive bonus and what are you digging ditches with a golden shovel or something? I don't understand.
No, it's a mystery, isn't it?
It is truly a mystery.
Our,
And again, as you said, we do need leaders, but we don't need the hierarchy. And it is possible to have one without the other when you have a community. That's something that we can talk about as we continue here with Carrie Hart and the Sojourner in Ataquay on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Carrie Hart is my guest. Website, carriehart.com, and we hope that you will go to her website and find out more about the work. We'll be linked to her website, folks. We linked all of our guests' websites. There have only been less than 1/10 of 1% of our guests who haven't had websites. That's very rare. But Carrie has one, and we want you to go there. Talk to us a little bit about um, this new, shall we call that the new version of community
Mm.
that people are looking for, and in some instances, some people have actually found it elsewhere on the planet.
I'm not sure if I know exactly what you're referring to. Are you
Well,
talking?
there's a community in Italy.
Oh,
Dunamore is the name of the community in Italy.
okay.
And they have this incredible underground. Oh my gosh, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life in
Oh,
pictures. But they are their own country, even within the city, the country of Italy. They have
I
their
haven't
own
heard
currency.
about this.
They have their own, shall we say, constitution or governing documents and so forth.
Uh-huh.
And people move there from all over the world to be a part of this community that is there to, I think the best way to put it, raise the consciousness, not only of the people that are there, but also of the planet.
Oh, fantastic. What is this? Dunamore, you said?
Dunamore, I believe that's how it's pronounced, Dunamore. I had them on the program some years ago. I need to
Yeah.
go back to see how things are going, but it was this cavern, massive, massive cavern. If you were to go down inside the cavern today, it's all lit. It looks like multiple different cathedrals and different chambers that have been painted and lit. And I mean, you wouldn't even know you were underground
Oh, for
if you
heaven's
did
sake.
not, you know. And the story goes that the local authorities found out about this and
Yes.
said, you don't have any permits, et cetera, all of the bureaucratic stuff.
Yeah.
So they said, well, why don't you come down and see what we have done? So the authorities went down into the cavern to see what they had done. They were so moved. They said, keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Well, I would like to think we don't need to go live in a cavern, although
No, no, no.
I'm
They
going
they live
to
on ground. They live above ground. They do.
but I think where we were going with this community is I think the core thing that happens when you have too much of a hierarchical structure of power and money is that it's almost like the people that have the power and the money become bullies to the rest of us, right?
Yes, yes.
And and then because we are positioned and we are trained to our society. Well, from little kids, we learn you do this, you get punished, you do this, you get rewarded. This is the way it is. And we are trained to fit into the institutional structures of our society. And those institutional structures are in our society are hierarchical. There's somebody in power and gets all the goodies,
Yeah.
and a bunch of people that don't, and that's the way it is. And yet, as we're talking about in the spiritual realms, I believe that we are all one. We're all one.
Mm.
And there's a level at which all hierarchy, I believe that's a human construct that is not beneficial human construct on the earth. And it is not what awaits us when we're through with this earthly life and we become just pure energy of our true selves. I don't believe that's hierarchical at all.
You know, one of the things that flashed through my mind just now was that there is a place on this planet, not a place physically, where when you are participating, there is no hierarchy, and that is uh, in games. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily sports, okay?
Mhm.
I'm talking, let's just say, like a board game. In chess, there are two players, but neither player is above the other. They're equal.
Right.
In,
Yeah, that's
I was thinking for some reason, I was thinking of Monopoly. It's the same thing. Everybody is on an even keel to start.
the
Uh,
start. But somebody gets on Park Place.
well, that is true. That is how the process will unfold. But initially, Everybody is equal. Everybody has the same opportunities and the same possibilities. It's how they choose, what they choose, when they choose, where they choose, etc., that makes
I
the
wish
difference.
I wish we could say that in our society everyone has equal opportunity.
Yeah.
We can't say that, of course. I
No,
mean,
but at the same time, wouldn't you agree that there are those who, at first glance, you'd say, "Oh, they don't have an." I mean, we're watching from a distance, okay? They don't
mhm,
have They don't have the same opportunities that this person over here had. And when you turn around and you look again at that person who you said didn't have opportunities, they've done something that has made a significant difference in their own life.
yes,
And
we we
off
all
they go. They have made choices that have catapulted them to places.
that's right. And
And
we
so,
all go
go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
We all have the opportunity to open ourselves to the guidance that's there for us. In other words, we all have the opportunity at some point to stop listening to the people that are trying to push us down
Hmm.
in the hierarchy and open ourselves to what I'm calling Ataquay, open ourselves to our inner potential to grow. It might be at some point when you're children, that there's a lot of difference in opportunity. But at some point when you become an adult, if you open yourself to the guidance that you can reach, that's there for you.
Yeah.
And we also all have the opportunity to reach inner peace. So I believe strongly that happiness is a choice that we make. In the here and now, I can make a choice to be happy. It isn't a future, my circumstance has to change. I think that's one of the problems where our society raises us, say, well, I'll be happy when.
Yeah.
In fact, right now, that's when I can
Yeah.
be happy right now.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm happy right now.
I
Yeah.
am too.
Well, our founding documents give us those inalienable rights of life, liberty, and happiness. Oh, I'm
Right.
sorry. Pursuit of happiness. I beg your pardon. But it is a choice. It really
It
is.
is. It
Uh,
is. And we
it's
all do have that choice.
yeah,
We
and
have
it's
that choice.
yeah, and there and what's interesting is I have to chuckle at this. There are people who choose not to be happy. I mean, they actually choose not to be happy. They want to be miserable. You know, it's really astounding. We're talking with Carrie Hart, and we're talking here on Tell Me Your Story.
Yes, I agree completely.
Welcome back to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it's been a real pleasure to have Carrie Hart with us here on the program, carriehart.com and Sojourner in Ataquay. And I want to thank you so much for your time. I have three final questions that I would like to ask you.
Oh,
You may have addressed them within the program, but I like to ask them directly. But before I do, I want to thank you for listening to and watching. Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m. We are streaming live at those times, as well as Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for a special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And we also encourage you to listen to the podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. And we're on YouTube where you can watch these interviews. I hope to subscribe to the podcasts and videocasts. You know that we're over 90,000 listens after 5 years? It's amazing. Since 1800. Since 2018, which is putting us at, I think, about 5 years, 19, 20, 20, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 5 years, yes, 90,000 listens on the podcast. Hope you'll, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you folks listening. I also appreciate you folks participating in the Decade of Perfect Vision, the 2020s, where we ask you to go within. We've been talking about that throughout the entire program, and listen to that still small voice. And if you can support the work we're doing here financially, we would greatly appreciate that. We have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. It'll ask you for an email address to whom you are sending it to. Richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email. Richard@richarddugan.com. And with that, we go to the three final questions as we wrap up this program today with our guest. The first of the three questions is, Who is Carrie Hart?
Who is Carrie Hart? Well, I'm a spiritual explorer and someone who I want to help other people come into this place of peace and connection and understanding that I have feel I was going to say that I've achieved, but of course I'm in the process of achieving.
Next question is, what is your life's purpose?
Well, I believe that there's a level at which I believe we all have the same purpose, which is to bring out our fullest expression of who we are, to bring out our talents, to bring out everything that we are and put it out there as authentically as we can.
Last question. I hope you get the reference. What was your best day?
You hope I get the reference? Oh, I guess I didn't.
The movie City Slickers.
Oh,
What was your best day?
my best day? Gee, I don't really think in those terms. I mean, I've had so many wonderful days. I may have to take a pass on that one, Richard. My best day. Well, I loved my wedding day. I loved that. That was great. Just the moment, actually, it would be a moment rather than the whole day, the moment of marrying my husband.
Wonderful. Carrie Hart, thank you again for joining us on the program.
All right. Well, thank you. This was a real pleasure.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, video cast, love to Lal and Jeanette, I am listening.